Welcome to Behind the Tools. Here's Tradify CEO and your host, Michael Steckler.
Hi everyone, welcome back to Behind the Tools. A different guest this week. We haven't got someone who's in the trades, but someone who works closely with the trades. We've got Sue de Bievre from Beany. Sue, welcome to the show.
Hey everybody, great to be here.
And some of you may actually already be customers of Beany, but do you want to maybe start, Sue, by explaining, what you do, who you are, what the company does?
Yep, sure. So Beany, we offer online accounting services to small business owners and specifically to lots and lots of tradies. Probably 1 in 3 of all of our clients are tradies. So we love the sector. And we do everything from financial statements, GST returns, BAS returns, tax advisory, everything that a traditional accountant does, but we do it online. And obviously they're great price point.
Yeah, cool. And, it's end of financial year in different parts of the world, sort of approaching now, already just happened. Have you seen any significant changes in the last couple of years with COVID in terms of the impact on accountants and how you do things?
COVID, I think, well, obviously it's impacted everybody, hasn't it? I think because we're a fully online service and always have been, I think for us, we really, particularly in that first lockdown in New Zealand, we really noticed a huge upsurge in sort of April, May, June 2020. When all of a sudden all the traders are stuck at home, nobody could get out, nobody could get out on the tools. So we had a real uptick in sales, and particularly to people who would typically be out there doing the do. All of a sudden they started to think, is there a better way of looking after my account? So we got super busy. And we'd spent a lot of time actually through that 3 months when tradies were in lockdown, picking up the phone and speaking to loads and loads of tradies to find out actually what they did want from their accountant. So that was useful for us.
And then a sort of probably a bit of an obvious question. I'm sure you get this a lot. And so it's one that people listening, lots of our customers will use Xero, MYOB, QuickBooks, Sage in the UK. Yeah. What's the main difference that you provide? Where do you think you sit in terms of those people that maybe are using Xero or another tool to sort of run their accounts?
Yeah, so we're the accountant that sits at the end. So we use Xero ourselves. So we encourage our clients to use Xero, although we do work with MYOB and Sage and QuickBooks. So we have all those kind of clients, but we prefer Xero, I guess, as a tool. Integrates obviously really well with other software, for example, like Tradify. I guess really we're quite Xero focused.
And so your pitch is really that they might have one of the things I hear a lot from trades companies we work with is they connect to a local business network often.
Yeah.
And in that business network, they often find, other like-minded people to help them, build their business, but also often their accountant. So essentially you providing kind of an online technology focused way of doing that without actually having to go and find a local accountant or an office is that principally the big difference? Exactly.
Yeah. So I guess that traditionally accountants have been sort of in the main street. They've had their offices and, as you said, there've been at business networking breakfasts and people have interacted with them there. But we are everywhere. So we're everywhere in New Zealand and Australia and just about to be in the UK. So rather than, I guess, having to go to those networking events or, hitting the main street or people in the pub and saying, who do you use? People hop online and find us online.
Yeah. And so all of your communication with them is online. Doesn't matter where the accountant really sits.
Correct.
You just manage the whole process.
Exactly. So our accountants are all over New Zealand and Australia. But what we do, we match. So the tradie comes in, we actually match them to a specific accountant. So it's not like we're just kind of a big amorphous team of people and they don't know who they're going to get. We've just been doing some research and one of our accountants, for example, is in Ashburton down there in the South Island. And the tradie was just saying, it's like Rebecca comes into my home because they're talking like this online, right? So she's sitting in her kitchen with her lap and he's sitting in his kitchen with his laptop and they're having a conversation. And he said it's kind of weirdly more connected than a traditional accountant where you might have to drive your ute to the accountant, take your boots off, go into his boardroom. Right. All of a sudden, you're actually having a conversation in your home with an accountant who's in their home. So it's quite highly connected like that.
And do you think you touched on the sort of boom during the COVID period because obviously everyone's at home and so they're looking at other ways to do things. What do you think has prompted this sort of move towards companies like yours away from that sort of traditional model of an accountant who's in a local area that's a personal recommendation or the like?
I guess it's a number of things, right? So Xero changed the kind of accounting landscape and made everybody feel like being online was a kind of a comfortable and smart place to be. So there's that kind of larger trend. I think there's a productivity piece in here as well. So if you are selling your services by the hour, whether you're a plumber or a Sparky or whoever you are, there's a time investment for you to have to go and see someone. Whereas if you've just got your accountant who's basically sort of on tap, who can see you when, suits you, you go into their calendar, you make the time to meet them. So they don't have to do the travel bit. They can just hop online. They can get 24/7 support from our support team. It's just the way of the future, right? It's enhancing everybody's productivity.
Yeah, the 24/7 thing is an interesting one. So I think for many people that are on the tools throughout the day, they don't want to carve out an important part of, where they could be making money to then speak to their accountant. So has that been a big shift that they can talk to your accountants in the evening or at weekends when they're actually doing their office work?
Yeah, so I have to say we do try to sort of look after our chartered accountants and not burn them out by lots of, sort of late night. But we are available, and so depending on the accountant, they I know some of our accountants do like catch up with their clients on the weekend or in the evenings, and our support team are sort of. They are a bunch of accountants who can answer all the kind of rats and mice kind of questions. So if you're just coding something and you're like, I don't actually know where to code this to, you can quickly send off a message and they bounce back pretty fast with the answer. So it's a much more immediate, much more responsive way of doing business, I think.
I guess the benefit to your workforce is they're not going to an office, right? They're able to work wherever they want. They may well be going to an office, but they're able to choose where they work and have that flexibility, which I think makes a big difference.
I think so. So we have really, really highly qualified and experienced people who've kind of sort of had enough of the old way of being an accountant too. So we've got people ex-PwC, ex-KPMG, all these, and they're highly qualified people. And now they want to be able to be there for their kids, flex around school stuff, flex around, social engagements. And that's all part of the deal that we offer them that flexibility.
Great. And so you work with, you said 1 in 3 of your customers are trades companies.
Yeah.
What's the most common sort of things they're trying to fix when they sign up?
I think it's probably fair to say that a lot of people who work in the trades are really, really, really good with their hands, right? So that it's a really practical profession often. And that seems to be diametrically opposed from the sort of the world of accounting. This is a kind of very generalized comment, but the last thing, honestly, a lot of them want to do is to have anything to do with accounting. They really just are not into it. So what they want to be able to do is passing the responsibility over to somebody else. And so they can pass as much or as little as they want, but we can effectively do almost everything for them if that's what they choose. So they like to just be able to switch off and not have to think about that.
And do you, from a reporting point of view, one of the sort of common problems, you see in trades companies is cash flow, which seemingly is getting potentially more complex with supply chains and other things like that. Is that an area you're often sort of dealing with in terms of health check, or even sort of, often people come to you because they're in crisis or have an issue and want to try and find their way out of that issue?
Yeah, so we sort of work in kind of different layers in that space. You're absolutely right. Cash flow is critical, particularly in the trades and particularly at the moment. I mean, we're all aware of the pressure that so many tradespeople are under, particularly in the building part of it. It's really, really, really tough out there. And we're very well aware of that. So we work with them in sort of, like I say, different layers. So we've got a dashboard which shows them sort of how they're doing, which is, and it's all pulled through from zero. So it's easy. They don't need to find reports. All the reports are just there for them. They have the support desk, as I say. So if they're getting stressed, we have a live interface with the IRD. So if we can see tax payments being missed, for example, that's always a red flag. So then we'll call them. And then they just have that connection with their accountant. So they reach out. And we do huge amounts of like cash flow preparations and helping walk people through that.
Cool. And what are the most sort of common mistakes that you see from trades companies? You're working with a lot now. What are the things you've seen that, often go wrong?
I have to be honest, I think, and particularly for people who are sort of fresh into it they've come worked for somebody else, now they're working for themselves. I think the whole area of quoting is really hard. So, underpricing jobs, and particularly where you've got rising prices. So, if they don't leave themselves with a little bit of buffer, they're either working at a loss or at such a tight margin. That whole piece around pricing is really an issue. And then I think just actually a lot of tradespeople, they want to have billable time that they're charging out where they're making money. How does my business actually function? Where am I actually making money? What do I need to be thinking about to really grow my business? So that kind of stepping back out of the soup and thinking, how can I make this business really hum?
Yeah, it's really interesting. The pricing thing is pretty fascinating. I think and some of the people that do that often speak to their old boss actually and say, hey, how do you charge? How do you come up with the hourly rate? And all those business networks can be quite useful for meeting other trades companies and understand what the pricing is. But often you're right. And then the other sort of common mistake is your first customer isn't always your best customer. So you often get, unless you've already got a sort of, a network of potential customers who will use you straight away that have used you historically, you're often picking the first customer, which is usually the person who wants the cheapest price. And it's good to get those jobs occasionally because they can actually give you the testimonial and all the things you need to then find your other customers, but they're often, you're often not making a profit on those jobs because they are so cheap.
And I think as well, if you get a combination of an underpriced job and a difficult customer, that's just a world of pain right there, isn't it?
Yeah. And that's once you've established yourself, great trades companies that know when to say no to certain customers and avoid some of those sort of tire kickers, for want of a better word, who just want the cheapest price and often are the most pedantic and most difficult customers. You definitely want to avoid them.
It's so true, right? The most sort of the ones who want the cheapest price also want the most service. It's like it's a weird paradigm, that one.
It's the person who buys one coffee and sits in the coffee shop for 8 hours. Yes.
Yeah.
Which is, not a great experience if you're a thing. And then, we touched on some of the topics around pricing is one big area, but the small businesses that you work with, what are the common traits, the ones that are most successful that you see, the things that they do kind of regularly that help them run a sort of thriving, profitable business?
And again, I look at it through a lens of an accountant, so apologies for this, but I do think it's understanding your numbers. If you do underprice something, and I'm sure everybody in every profession has done this, right? But if you underprice and you make a loss in a job, you really want to be able to see that so that you can learn and do it better next time. So having some understanding of your numbers, which kind of jobs are you making money on, and really understanding what does the ideal customer look like? What does the ideal sector sort of niche for you look like, so that you can really hone in on your strengths? And then I think, and sort of staying calm, staying in control, and having that sort of level of confidence that actually understanding your business brings, then I think you can really, obviously do extremely well. Yeah,
I think it's where you can make better intentional choices, even if it's you're setting up a business and that first 2 to 5 jobs might be unprofitable, or you might make a tiny profit, but there's a reason and intention behind it, versus getting a nasty surprise of, I've been really busy this week and I've made no money. That that's not a good scenario.
It's not.
And then sort of tax year, end of tax year kind of just happened here and in other parts of the world. It's coming up. What advice would you give trades businesses in terms of starting a new fiscal year? What are the things to think through and they should do to get their house in order?
It would be really tempting for me to give you a long kind of shopping list of here's what you should be doing. I just was thinking about this earlier, and I think, pick one thing that you're going to change that's going to reduce future pain, if that makes sense. Yeah. So it might be, let's say somebody's listening to this podcast and they're thinking, I wonder if I should get Tradify. So it might be a little bit of a shift to actually go out and put some new software in, for example, but it might then save you, 20 hours a month. So make one change, which is going to reduce your costs in the future or bring you joy or increase your revenue, but commit to it and make that one change. Because once you've done that one thing, then you can build on it. You can do the next thing and the next thing and the next thing, but just choose one thing for now, I think.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. You try and do too many things, you'll do none of them.
Yeah, it's
not easy. I think even we stay with Tradify. Even it's if you've been used to doing a certain thing a certain way for a very long period of time. Yeah. Initially, it's quite painful. We like to think you get the benefits over time, but that initial kind of pain for the first few months to change your process can be difficult.
It'd be great if I just gave you, do these 10 things and you'll be fine. But that's not the reality. The reality is we're all trying to service our customers and raise our invoices and look after our people and all those things. And you just need to be realistic about what you can tackle.
Yeah. And then you talked about building works. I mean, one thing we have seen in this period is, although there has been, supply chain issues and other things have had an impact, there has been this sort of mini boom for, quality tradespeople. And we're seeing this everywhere in the world. Too much work, almost too much demand. Do you have any advice for those people? I mean, one of the temptations, I think I had someone on here a while back and they refer to themselves as sort of the yes person, which is they will say yes to every job because, there is a fear that, well, actually tomorrow it could dry up or things could change. How do you work with those companies that are really growing very quickly, business is booming? Any advice that you give them as their accountants?
To me, then it's all about systems, right? Because if you grow rapidly without systems, I hate to say it, you are in danger. And I'm sure I've certainly seen it where particularly in building, because you're putting a lot of money out there, right? So you can easily come unstuck. And we mentioned cash flow earlier on. So for me, it's all about systems. Do you have systems for managing your people? Do you have systems for managing your accounts? Do you have systems for managing your customers? Are you thinking proactively about not what's the next thing I've got to do, but what's the system that's going to contain this growth?
Right. Yeah, and therefore you can't predict it, and the systems you need for a sole trader versus having 5 employees is very different. So I completely agree. You must have seen. I've had some funny stories. I spoke to an accountant a while back in Australia, and he had some funny sort of tax return stories. I'm presuming you've seen some interesting things in your time working with trades companies and companies in general. What are any that you can share?
It's funny. I just mentioned before, I just did a quick call out to all our accountants in Australia and New Zealand. Come back with funny tradie stories. And so the couple that stood out in Australia, where somebody had tried to put their dog on as a director of a building company, which I thought was quite interesting. I think they wanted to claim more expenses for another person, in inverted commas. The other one that there's a real theme around stress relief. So tradies love to claim for stress relief. So that can be as broad as, I need a new PS4 because it relieves tension at the end of the day, and I'm better, sparky if I've been playing on my PlayStation. Those are definitely things that come in that we routinely get asked about.
And so you when you're sort of doing those tax returns, presumably you're giving, you're having to give quite advice on that's not going to be claimable.
Correct. If the revenue takes a look at that, you're going to get pinged, mate. So just, we better pull that one out.
Yeah, cool. And I guess the other thing is sort of, I think if you're a trades company, small trades company listening to this, and you're thinking about, tax returns and everything else, why is it so important? Can you give any examples of, penalties or, potential issues that come down the track if you're not doing this stuff effectively and maybe don't have an accountant or software or something to help you manage this?
Yeah. Listen, every accountant in the world has seen some real horror stories, and quite often we'll have new clients coming in and we're looking at their accounts, and it can go either way, right? So it can go the way we're looking at their accounts and we can just see, because we know what we're expecting to see in a set of accounts, we can see that they maybe haven't claimed a lot of money. Right. On average, every year for every tradie that comes in, we save them $4,000 in tax that they didn't know they could claim. So that's on average what we save our clients. So there's that way. And then the other way, of course... Sorry,
so just to jump on that, can you give a couple of examples of things that people... Because I think that's a really good point that, actually, it's a way to think about sometimes accountants is, they're not there to show you ways to spend more money, but actually to help you save money. Give a couple of examples of things that people don't claim for very commonly that they should be.
So sometimes it's things that are just not claimed for. So I guess one of the classics is your home office. So, you're sitting at home, you're doing your invoices, and you can claim a proportion of your floor area. And that's everything from your mortgage interest to your power to your internet, everything can be claimed. And that's usually quite a substantial claim. So that's one. The other area that we look at very much is how we can structure your tax affairs. So there are ways of putting structures in place which just reduce your tax burden. And so, of course, that's primarily what we're looking at the end of the year. And that's highly specialized knowledge, which, you just need an accountant to help you with. And so that's where the tax savings come from.
Everyone listening is going to be going asking their accountant, why have you not saved you $4,000 a year? Yeah.
And we actually, because we are a tech company, we actually run a calculation on all of our clients. So we always look at it sort of pre and post. What did we do? What difference did we make? And that's why we can say with confidence, we know that's what we save our clients on average. But then the other side of the coin is if they have claimed for a PlayStation, all those kind of things, if they've claimed that, if the revenue never looks, it's not a problem, right? But if the revenue looks, they slap on very substantial penalties, up to 100% of the tax that should have been paid. And if they go back and audit you 3 years ago, then they add that penalty. It compounds every year and interest compounds with it. And you can be looking at hundreds of thousands quite quickly. And that's the scary side.
Yeah, and presumably those things are hopefully in the minority, I think, in terms of claims as well. Any other sort of advice? This has been great, I think, really helpful in terms of practical things that I think trades companies should think through. And if they already have an accountant, what they do or they don't, a set of questions they can ask them. Any other advice you'd give anyone who's thinking about, and one of the things we often hear about is people that you described who have worked for someone else now thinking about going out alone. Any other advice you would give them in terms of things to think through when they're setting up their business?
Probably the key piece of advice is call an accountant before you set up your business.
Yeah.
Just to make sure, I was talking about that tax structural piece, getting into the right structure. So is it a company? Is it a sole trader? Is it a partnership? Like what's best? And it's not a standard answer because it depends on the individual.
Yeah.
And then the other part is probably just to think about if you're going to have subbies of your own, just to be aware of your tax obligations with withholding tax. So so probably a conversation sooner rather than later. You're going to need an accountant, get one sooner, and then ask the question so you don't get yourself into the poo later.
Yeah, you don't find yourself paying a subcontractor for 6 months and then realizing that you didn't withhold tax and you need to
exactly.
do that stuff. And
yeah.
It's really great advice. Cool. We always finish on a few questions, some of which you've already answered actually. One I'm going to ask, which is, in terms of penalties, what is the worst penalty you've seen in your career?
I've seen penalties for hundreds of thousands.
Yeah,
like hundreds of, and I've seen quite a few of those. I remember one particularly where it was just a GST return which was filled out incorrectly, and it got an $85,000 penalty.
Wow!
Just on one GST.
And those presumably sometimes are enough to put someone out of business.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, completely.
If you weren't an accountant, and you have been for, I'm presuming that's an expertise you've clearly got. Which trade would you have picked if you were going to be a tradesperson? What would you have?
I'm obsessed with grand designs. I just look at all the builders, and I want to be a builder. Yeah. I want to build a house. Yeah. Like I know that it's more complex than just like being a builder, but that I would love to build something with my hands. That would be so awesome.
Yeah. No, it's quite actually, even talking to other tradespeople, that sort of often comes up as a thing that they would like to do.
Yeah.
And then, how would you rate your own skills? DIY skills out
unfortunately, 10? I would rate my skills 0 out of 10. I'm the least practical person in the world. So it's probably just as well I'm not a builder and I am an accountant.
0? I'm
terrible,
not even a 1 or 2?
No, shockingly bad.
Oh, a 0. So that's pretty low. And then when you want to treat yourself for a good lunch when you're working, what's that look like?
I love food, so anything really. I don't know, Thai, nice sushi, anything. Indian.
Yeah.
I love food.
Yeah. Cool. All right. And then biggest myth about accountants or accounting in general?
I reckon the biggest myth is that it's a black and white trade. It's a black and white thing that we do. It's right or it's wrong. And that's not true. Honestly, if you show one scenario to 5 different accountants, you'll get 5 different answers. And that's the trick. So find an accountant that will do their absolute best for you, will really work hard for you.
And does that come into play at all? So you talked about how for your business sort of matching. Is there some level of sort of personality matching that takes place? Is there often people that qualify themselves out because they just don't get on?
Yeah, no, totally. So we have a part of our software actually, and the salespeople are talking to tradies all the time, right? So they're talking and they sort of get a bit of a feel for who this person is.
Right.
And then we've got software which then matches that person with one of our accountants. And we've got a pretty good hit rate. Every once in a while we'll switch accountants if we feel there's a clash. But generally speaking, so I think the accountant I mentioned down in Ashburton, Rebecca, she's really, really honest, upfront, extroverted. And so some clients love that, but some want somebody quieter and calmer. So we try to match.
Interesting. And what does the software do? What does it look for?
So, well, it looks for 2 things primarily. It looks for personality. So, and this is software that's looking at our accountants, not our clients. We love all our clients, but so we're looking for personality. Like Rebecca's really out there, and then we've got Cherie and Hamilton. She's a bit quieter and a bit gentler, so that suits some people. So there's that kind of personality thing, and then on the other side there's technical skills. So Cherie is a gun with Agri, for example. So, so just depending a little bit around skills,
the business type you're in. Exactly. Yeah. Cool. And then you come across a lot of people, you're working with lots of trades companies. Anyone, as we think through our next podcast, anyone you would recommend that we would speak to that would make for an interesting conversation?
Oh, wow. I'm not prepared for that question. I will definitely come back because we've got amazing tradespeople. So let me come back to you. I will.
Yeah, we have the great to talk to them.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, look, there's been some really good practical advice, and I think some probably if people aren't doing this stuff already, you've probably scared them into thinking about doing it. But I don't think it's a hugely scary. I mean, most trades companies we work with are good companies that understand how to do this stuff. But actually, I think it's important to have a process, have a team that can work with you, and look at your current system. Does it work for you? Is there other ways of
100%? And it's not hard to do. And so if you do feel like you're not getting what you need, have a conversation.
So for those people that are on that sort of, maybe are either unhappy or don't have someone and are sort of thinking through that step, where can they find
if they just go straight to beany.com, hop online and just fill out a contact form, and somebody will give them a buzz and they can have that chat.
Yeah, cool. And where does the name come from? Just out of interest, the Beany bit.
So Beany is just for bean counters. So it comes from.
Sorry, I should have. Yes.
No, it's totally good. And it was funny. We were, like naming your business is the worst thing in the world, and so we started calling the software Beany just internally, and then it just stuck. So
stuck.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, it's memorable.
Yeah.
Great. Cool. Well, Sue, really appreciate spending the time. Some great advice.
Thanks it's a pleasure again. Talking to you.
And thanks everyone else for listening. If you have any other comments, questions, feedback, as always, please let us know and rate and review on your chosen platform. It will be gratefully received. Until next time. Thanks, Sue. See you soon.
Bye
Cheers.
for now.
And that brings us to the end of this episode. Behind the Tools is brought to you by Tradify, job management software for your trade business. If you enjoyed the podcast, let us know by leaving a review, and be sure to tell your mates about it. Email behindthetools@tradifyhq.com if you or someone you know would be keen to join the show as a guest.